The reason you can't receive help without guilt isn't a personal flaw. It's because you were trained to believe that receiving makes you selfish. If you've ever felt your stomach twist when someone offers to help, if you've ever turned down support you desperately needed because accepting it felt wrong, if you've said, "I'm fine," while drowning because asking for help felt like admitting defeat, this one's for you. Welcome to Your Witchy Mother. We cover everything your mother never taught you without the guilt. Body-led choices, steady money, clear boundaries, with practical rituals and zero performance. Hi, I'm Melanie, your witchy mother. I help women who left control-based systems remember their power and live it daily. Today, we're dismantling the lie that receiving is selfish. We're tracing where this martyr programming started, who it actually serves, and what it's costing you to keep believing it. And this is something no one else is saying. When you refuse to receive, you're not just hurting yourself, you're dimming collective power. By the end of this, you'll see reception as the sacred act that it actually is, and you'll have a path to start practicing it. Let me tell you about martyr programming and how it gets wired into our nervous system. I learned early that a good woman gives until she disappears. My first husband taught me that lesson well. I was barely 20, fresh out of a sheltered childhood, and I took his every word as gospel. There was no rest in that house. If I was sick, I still had to serve. If I'd just given birth, I was expected to clean the kitchen. If he was sick, the house had to fall silent while I tended to him like a nurse in a chapel. That rhythm, the constant giving and constant depletion, followed me for years. It felt holy somehow, like a proof of my devotion and love to him. But it was just self-erasure dressed in virtue. Here's what I didn't understand then. The refusal to receive wasn't humility. It was a survival strategy. When you're raised in systems that reward self-erasure and punish visibility, receiving becomes dangerous. Because receiving means you matter. Receiving means that you have needs. Receiving means that you're allowed to take up space. And women who take up space get punished. My dad made that crystal clear. He had good intentions, but, he was the one who taught me that good women serve, give, sacrifice, and never ask for anything in return. Think of others before you think of yourself. That was the sermon I heard my whole childhood. And here's the real mindfuck. He'd point to my mother as proof. He'd say that that was what was wrong with her, that she was selfish and she never did anything for others. She took instead of gave. And after 20 years of marriage, he left her. And my young mind connected that as the reason that he left her. So I learned early, asking for anything, receiving anything meant that I was like my mom. Because if I asked for too much, I was being selfish. And if I was selfish, I would end up alone. We learned to preemptively shrink, to say, "I'm fine" when I'm drowning, to refuse help even when our bodies are begging for it, to call it love, to call it devotion, to call it holy. But it was never holy. It was control. The lie that receiving is selfish doesn't keep you humble. It keeps you useful. Think about who benefits when you refuse help, when you stay exhausted, when you never stop giving. It's not you. My body finally called my bluff. Heart racing, blood pressure spiking, the kind of exhaustion that you can't pray away. A doctor told me that I had supraventricular tachycardia. Try saying that 3 times fast. Literally, my heart couldn't keep up with my lack of boundaries. So I had to have a cardiac ablation. And lying there afterward, wires still fresh in my memory, I thought, this is what happens when you worship sacrifice. How many of you are running on fumes right now, convincing yourself that rest is lazy? Your body is keeping the score, and eventually it's going to cash that check. Here's what actually happens when you refuse to receive. Your nervous system stays in overdrive. You're constantly scanning for who needs what, anticipating everyone's needs but your own. You develop stress-related health issues, adrenal fatigue, migraines, chronic pain, because your body is screaming what your mouth won't say. I need help. Your relationships suffer. You think you're being generous, but you're actually teaching people that they can't give to you, that the relationship is one way, that you don't trust them enough to be vulnerable. And here's the thing, when you never receive, you never let people truly know you, because being known requires being vulnerable. And being vulnerable requires admitting that you have needs. Your money stays stuck. You can't call in abundance when you're energetically pushing away everything that comes towards you. Every time you refuse help, you're telling the universe, I don't deserve support. And the universe believes you. But here's what nobody talks about. When you refuse to receive, you're not just hurting yourself, which is bad enough. You're breaking the chain of reciprocity. You're teaching the next generation that needs are shameful, that asking is weakness, and we all stay isolated, depleted, fighting alone. Now, some of you might be thinking, but isn't it better to be self-sufficient? Isn't independence strength? Here's the thing. Independence and isolation aren't the same. Patriarchal systems like the churches, corporations, and families built on traditional gender roles, they need women who won't receive, because women who receive get dangerous. A woman who receives support has time to think. A woman who has money has power to leave. A woman who receives help builds community instead of isolation. A woman who receives rest remembers who she is, and her intuition kicks on. That's terrifying to any system built on control. So they dress up refusal as virtue. They call it humility, service, selflessness, the Proverbs 31 woman who never stops working. But really, it's just another way to keep you compliant. After I left my first husband, people from the church offered help, meals, childcare, money. And at first I said yes, because I desperately needed it. It was for my children, but I very quickly started to say no. Not because I didn't need it, I desperately needed it, but because accepting help felt like admitting that I had failed. Like I was a burden, like I was less than. Does that sound familiar? It took me years to realize my refusal wasn't protecting anyone. It was just keeping me isolated, exhausted, and easier to ignore. The system didn't care if I suffered. It cared that I stayed quiet while I did it. So if refusal keeps you small, what does real reception look like? It's not passive. It's not waiting to be rescued. It's not spiritual bypassing with affirmations about worthiness. Reception is an active practice, a choice you make in your body, not just in your mind. That was the day I began saying no, not as defiance, but as survival. No to overgiving. No to martyrdom disguised as love. No to running my body into the ground just to prove I'm good and holy. Devotion looks different now. It looks like slow mornings. It looks like asking my kids to bring me food when I need rest. Something that once felt unthinkable. It looks like sitting on the deck, surrounded by trees, remembering that I'm part of nature too, and I'm not its servant. It looks like letting my spine melt into the bed and calling that prayer. Here's what reception actually looks like in practice. It looks like saying yes when someone offers to bring you dinner, even though your kitchen is messy and you feel like you should handle it yourself. It looks like accepting the compliment without deflecting, without making it a joke, without immediately giving one back. It looks like letting someone pay for your coffee without reaching for your wallet or keeping a mental tally. Oh, I'll pay you back. It looks like taking a nap when your body asks for it instead of pushing through because there's still laundry to do. Now, I know what you're thinking, but what if I become one of those people who just takes and never gives back? Here's the truth. If you're worried about that, you're not going to become that. The women who exploit others don't lie awake at night worried about being selfish. They don't watch videos about martyr programming. You're here because you give too much, not too little. Learning to receive doesn't turn you into a taker. It turns you into someone with enough in your cup to actually give from overflow instead of depletion. When my back aches or my pulse pounds, I know I've crossed the line again. That's my body's sermon. Rest before the altar becomes a hospital bed. They told me that self-sacrifice was love, But the truth is simpler. Love that costs your life isn't love. It's a slow death dressed up as devotion. So here's what I want you to consider. What if your refusal to receive isn't protecting anyone? What if it's just keeping you exhausted, isolated, and stuck in patterns that were never yours to begin with? What if the work isn't learning to give more, but learning to receive without guilt? Start small. Just one small act of reception. Let someone hold the door open for you. Accept the offer of help. Take the compliment. Rest without justification. And notice what comes up in your body. Notice the guilt, the shame, the immediate urge to give something back. And just breathe through it. That discomfort is the old programming recognizing that it's being replaced. Let it burn. Reception isn't taking. It's participating in the flow of energy that keeps communities alive. If this is landing and you're starting to see how deep this pattern runs, if you're recognizing that the refusal to receive is just one thread in a much larger web of obedience conditioning, I want you to take my free quiz. It's called What's Your Obedience Contract Costing You? And it takes 2 minutes. It'll show you exactly which pattern is running your life right now. Not in a vague way, but in a holy shit, that's why I can't rest kind of way. You'll get your result immediately and you'll see exactly what needs to shift. The link is in the description. Take the quiz, see what's actually costing you, because you didn't come this far to keep living someone else's idea of holy.